Bahá'u'lláh Divine Educator. Throughout human history, great religions have served as the main driving force behind the education of human character and the manifestation of self-discipline, devotion and heroism by their followers. Many of the moral principles of religion have formed a basis for structures and patterns of behavior that have served to elevate human relationships and advance the collective life of humankind. Each time the manifestation of God comes, a fuller measure of inspiration is released in the world, which is necessary for the next stage of the awakening and development of humanity. Outwardly, an ordinary human being is called to become a herald of God. Here you can remember Moses, standing in front of the burning bush. Buddha received enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The Holy Spirit descended on Jesus Christ in the form of a dove, or the Archangel Gabriel, who appeared before Muhammad. In the middle of the 19th century, God called Bahá'u'lláh, whose name means glory of God, to convey to humanity a new revelation. For 4 decades, thousands of poems, messages and books have flowed from his pen. In his writings, he outlined the general system for the development of world civilization, which takes into account both the spiritual and material aspects of human life. I have never claimed worldly dominion. My only purpose was to give people what God commanded me to convey. Bahá'u'lláh endured 40 years of bondage, torment and exile for bringing God's latest message to humanity. Today, his life and mission are becoming more and more famous all over the planet. Millions of people are learning to apply his teachings in their personal and collective lives to improve the world. The teachings of Bahá'u'lláh today bestow upon us the highest and purest form of religious teaching. Count Leo Tolstoy, Russian writer. The Life of Bahá'u'lláh, April 1863. Men and women, young and old, from all walks of life gather on the road leading to the banks of the Tigris River in Baghdad. In tears, they said goodbye to the one who became their friend, comforter and mentor. Mirza Hussain Ali, known as Bahá'u'lláh, left them to go to another exile. A prominent follower of the Bab, whose teachings had swept through Persia 2 decades earlier, Bahá'u'lláh left the comfortable life of an aristocrat, voluntarily agreeing to imprisonment and exile for the rest of his days. But despair soon gave way to hope. Before finally leaving the vicinity of Baghdad, Bahá'u'lláh openly announced to his comrades what many of them had already guessed, that he is the great divine teacher that was announced by the Bab, the one who was destined to open a new era in history, an era when tyranny and injustice will be replaced by world peace, and the kingdom of justice will come, and the principle of the unity of mankind will triumph. The divine spring was approaching. Childhood and youth. Mirza Hussain Ali was born in Tehran, the capital of Iran, on November 12, 1817, into a noble aristocratic family. From a very early age, he displayed extraordinary knowledge and wisdom. Instead of following in the footsteps of his father and becoming a statesman, Mirza Hussain Ali decided to devote himself to caring for the poor. He did not seek high positions or prominence in society. The adoption of the Baba religion forever changed the life of the young nobleman and his family. Although they never met in person, as soon as Mirza Hussain Ali heard the message of the Bab, he announced that he fully and completely believed in him, and with all his energy and influence began to spread this faith. In 1848, an important gathering of the followers of the Bab took place in Badasht, a village in northeastern Iran. The outcome of this conference was a confirmation of the independent character of the new religion, and Mirza Hussain Ali played a key role in this. From that moment on, Mirza Hussain Ali became known as Bahá'u'lláh, which in Arabic means glory of God. As the Baba community grew, it met with increasingly fierce opposition from Muslims. Thousands and thousands of Babis were subjected to the most cruel and barbaric tortures, and many were executed. When 300 Babis tried to find refuge in the abandoned tomb of Sheikh Tabasi, Bahá'u'lláh went there to join them, but he was prevented from reaching his goal. In 1850, the Bab was publicly executed. Most of the leading followers of the Bab had perished, and it soon became apparent that Bahá'u'lláh was the only one whom the rest of the Babis could entrust with the leadership of the community. Revelation in 1852, Bahá'u'lláh was falsely credited with complicity in the assassination attempt on the life of the Iranian Shah Nasir al-Din. When the arrest warrant was issued, Bahá'u'lláh went to meet his accusers, much to the surprise of those who had been sent to arrest him. They led him, barefoot and in chains, through the crowded streets of Tehran and threw him into the infamous underground dungeon Black Pit. This underground once served as a wastewater reservoir for a public bath. The prisoners were thrown into this dank and fetid atmosphere, shackled together with unbearably heavy chains. The scars from these chains remained on the body of Bahá'u'lláh for the rest of his life. It was in this gloomy atmosphere that one of the most remarkable events in the entire history of the new faith took place. A man who outwardly seemed an ordinary mortal was chosen by God to convey to mankind a new message from above. This experience of divine revelation, of which only euphemistically mentioned in the extant biographies of Moses, Jesus and Muhammad in this era, was referred to us in their own words of Bahá'u'lláh during those days spent in Tehran prison. Although so severity chains and the stench, the air was barely allowed to fall asleep. Yet in rare moments of drowsiness it seemed to me that something like a mighty stream was flowing down to the ground from the top of the highest mountain, from the crown of my crown to my chest. Strength would be listened to by any of the people linked to Baghdad. After 4 months of painful imprisonment, Bahá'u'lláh, sick and exhausted, was released, but he was commanded to leave his native Iran forever. He and his family were sent to Baghdad. The surviving followers of the Bab began increasingly to turn to Bahá'u'lláh for moral and spiritual guidance. The nobility of character, wise advice, the kindness with which he surrounded everyone without exception, and the signs of superhuman greatness that are increasingly noticeable in his personality. All this gradually began to fill the destroyed community with life. The growing influence of Bahá'u'lláh in the community of the followers of the Bab aroused fierce envy on the part of Mirza Yahya, his ambitious younger half-brother. Mirza Yahya made a series of dishonorable attempts to slander Bahá'u'lláh and sow seeds of suspicion and uncertainty among his companions. Not wishing to become a cause of tension, Bahá'u'lláh withdrew to the mountains of Kurdistan, where he lived for 2 years, meditating alone on the divine mission entrusted to him. This period of his life is very reminiscent of the departure of Moses to Mount Sinai, the hermitage of Christ in the desert, and the lonely wanderings of Muhammad through the Arabian hills. Nevertheless, even in this remote region, the fame of Bahá'u'lláh gradually began to spread. People passed from mouth to mouth a rumor that a man of extraordinary wisdom and eloquence had appeared there. When these rumors reached Baghdad, the Babis assumed that they were talking about Bahá'u'lláh and sent ambassadors to him, who were to pray to him to return. Back in Baghdad, Bahá'u'lláh filled the lives of the followers of the Bab with new energy. Respect for the community began to grow, and the fame of himself stepped even further. During this period, he wrote 3 of his most famous works: The Hidden Words, The 7 Balas, and the Book of Certainty, Kitab-i-Igan. Although in these writings Bahá'u'lláh alluded to his mission, it was still too early to publicly announce it. The growing glory of Bahá'u'lláh has reawakened the envy and anger that had once subsided among the Islamic clergy. Letters were sent to the Iranian Shah, asking him to ask the Ottoman Sultan to remove Bahá'u'lláh further from the Iranian border. Bahá'u'lláh was declared a second exile at the end of April 1863, shortly before leaving the outskirts of Baghdad for Istanbul, known in the West at the time as Constantinople. Bahá'u'lláh and his companions remained for 12 days in a garden which he called Rizwan, which means paradise. There, on the banks of the Tigris River, Bahá'u'lláh declared himself to be the one whom the Bab announced, the messenger of God for the era of the collective maturity of mankind, predicted by all the scriptures of the world's religions. Further links: 3 months after leaving Baghdad, Bahá'u'lláh and his companions in exile reached Constantinople. They remained there for only 4 months, after which they were expelled further to the city of Adrianople. It was a grueling journey in the middle of an unusually cold winter. In Adrianople, they were housed in a house that was completely unable to protect them from the low temperatures. Bahá'u'lláh calls Adrianople a distant dungeon. Nevertheless, despite the unfavorable conditions in which the exiles were forced to live, divinely inspired verses continued to flow from the pen of Bahá'u'lláh, and his messages reached even as distant places as Egypt and India. During this period, Mirza Yahya, Bahá'u'llah's envious half-brother, attempted to poison him. Bahá'u'lláh survived, but his hands trembled until the end of his life, as can be seen from his handwriting. Beginning in September 1867, Bahá'u'lláh began writing a series of addresses to the monarchs and rulers of various countries. In these prophetic writings, he openly proclaimed his position and ushered in the dawn of a new era. But he warned that first, humanity will have to go through catastrophic upheavals in political and social life. He called on world leaders to uphold the cause of justice and create a special organization within which they could negotiate and end the war. Only by acting together, he said, can lasting peace be established. His warnings were completely ignored. An ongoing campaign of slander by Bahá'u'llah's ill wishes forced the Ottoman government to expel him once more to its darkest penal colony. Arriving at the Mediterranean prison city of Akku on the 31st of August 1868, Bahá'u'lláh spent the rest of his life there. Having been kept in a prison cell for more than 2 years, he and his companions were later moved to a cramped house located within the city walls. Little by little, the high moral qualities of the Baha'is, especially Bahá'u'llah's eldest son, Abdul-Baha, softened the hearts of their jailers and broke through the fanaticism and indifference of the inhabitants of Akka. As in Baghdad and Adrianople, Bahá'u'llah's nobility of character gradually won him the respect of the locals, including some of their leaders. In Akka, Bahá'u'lláh revealed his most important work, the Kitab-i-Aqdas, most holy book, in which he laid out the basic laws and principles of his faith, and laid the foundations for the building of a world administrative order. Last years in the late 1870s, Bahá'u'lláh, while formerly remaining a prisoner, was given some freedom to move outside the city walls, which allowed his followers to meet with him in a relatively calm environment. In April 1890, Professor Edward Grenfell Brown of Cambridge University met with Bahá'u'lláh at a house rented to him near Akka. Brown described the meeting as follows: "The face I gazed at, I can never forget, but I can't describe. Those shrewd eyes seemed to read from the very depths of my soul. There was no need to ask in whose presence I am, and I bowed down to the one who is the subject of such adoration and such love, whom kings can envy and about whom emperors sigh in vain." Double quote. Bahá'u'lláh died on May 29, 1892. In his testament, he appointed Abdul-Baha as his successor and head of the Baha'i faith. For the first time in history, the founder of world religion appointed a successor to himself, so that no one could doubt it. This selection of a successor is the cornerstone of the institution known as the Covenant of Bahá'u'lláh. It is the covenant that will enable the Baha'i community to maintain its unity throughout its entire existence. Selected writings of Bahá'u'lláh like the Torah for the Jews, the Bible for Christians, or the Quran for Muslims. The entire collection of Bahá'u'llah's writings for his followers is the revelation of God. These scriptures are at the core of the Baha'i faith. During the long years of exile, Bahá'u'lláh revealed over 100 volumes of divine verses. These include social and ethical teachings, prayers, laws and regulations, mystical treatises, and fearless proclamations of his mission to the most powerful rulers of his time. Let their brilliant, peacemaking, loving words and lessons penetrate deeply into your hearts. Queen Mary of Romania. Below is a small selection of excerpts from the writings of Bahá'u'lláh. It is obvious to every sensitive and enlightened heart that God, an incomprehensible essence, a divine being, is exalted infinitely above any human quality. Such is his glory that human lips cannot praise him according to dignity, and human hearts cannot comprehend his bottomless mystery. Kitab-i-Aqdas. Since the gates of comprehension of the one who is the Ancient of Days are closed in the face of every creature, the source of infinite mercy commanded these radiant gems of holiness to emerge from the kingdom of the Spirit in the noble guise of a human temple and reveal themselves to all people in order to tell the world about the mysteries of the unchanging being and tell about the subtlest manifestations of his incorruptible essence. Kitab-i-Aqdas. These pure mirrors, these dawns of eternal glory are, each and every one, the earthly expression of the one who is the main luminary of the universe, its essence and ultimate destiny. From him proceeds their knowledge and authority, from him proceeds their dominion. Kitab-i-Aqdas. Guided by the light of infallible guidance and clothed with supreme dominion, they were sent to cleanse every thirsty heart and receptive spirit from the frailty and dust of earthly worries and limitations by their inspiring speeches, the outpouring of their endless grace and the holy breaths of their revelation. Grains from the writings of Bahá'u'lláh. This is the unchanging faith of God, eternal in the past, eternal in the future. Kitabayakdus. Truly I say, this is the day when humanity can contemplate the face and heed the voice of the promised one. Grains from the writings of Bahá'u'lláh. I am the sun of wisdom and the ocean of knowledge. I cheer up the weak and raise the dead. I am the guiding light that illuminates the path. I am the royal falcon at the right hand of the Almighty. I open the drooping wings of every wounded bird and send it flying. Tabernacle of unity. I was the same person as everyone else, sleeping on his bed, when suddenly the breath of the All-Glorious fanned me and filled me with knowledge of everything that was. This is not from me, but from him who is almighty and all-knowing. And he commanded me to lift my voice between earth and heaven, and for this something overtook me, from which tears flow from the eyes of every understanding person. Calls of the Lord of Powers. The omniscient physician keeps his finger on the pulse of humanity. He recognizes ailment and, in his infallible wisdom, prescribes a remedy for it. Every age has its own concern, and every soul has a special aspiration. The world, with its present misfortunes, needs a completely different means in the coming century. Rejoice with all your soul about the needs of the age in which you live, and let the needs and demands of it become the main topic of your discussions. Tabernacle of Unity. The day is coming when the most excellent gifts of God will be poured out on people. The day when his greatest mercies will be turned to all creation. All peoples of the earth should settle their differences and in complete unity and peace, dwell under the shadow of the tree of his care and mercy. Grains from the writings of Bahá'u'lláh. The Lord chose the union of all nations in one common cause, in one faith as the best medicine and the most powerful means for healing the whole world. Calls of the Lord of Powers. Treat followers of all religions in a spirit of friendliness and brotherhood. Tablets of Bahá'u'lláh. Basharit. You are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch. Treat each other with the greatest love and harmony, friendliness and camaraderie. He who is the day star of truth is my witness. The light of unity is so powerful that it can illuminate the entire earth. Message to the son of the wolf. The earth is a single country, and humanity is its citizens. Tablets of Bahá'u'lláh. Law I Maqsad. The first duty imposed by God on his servants is the recognition of the one who is the rising of his revelation, and the source of his laws, the representative of God's nature in the kingdom of his work and in the world of creation. Kitabayakdus. O Son of the Spirit, my first advice is this: have a pure, loving, radiant heart, so that you will attain the eternal, imperishable, infinite kingdom. Hidden words. See a person as a deposit of priceless gems. Only education can extract these treasures and allow humanity to turn them to its advantage. Tablets of Bahá'u'lláh. Law I Maqsad. Only when the lamp of search, zealous effort, passionate desire, reckless devotion, ardent love, admiration and delight, and when a breath of his tender care sweeps over his soul, then the darkness of delusion disappears, the fog of doubts and fears, and the light of knowledge and conviction will embrace his being. Kitabayigan. Be generous in abundance and grateful in adversity. Be worthy of the trust of your neighbor, and look at him with a bright and friendly gaze. Be a treasure for the poor, an exhortator for the rich, an answer to the call of the needy, a keeper of the sanctity of your pledge. Be impartial in judgment and discreet in speech. Do not be unjust to anyone, but show perfect meekness to every person. Be a torch for those wandering in darkness, a joint for the mourning, a spring for the thirsty, a haven for the poor, a friend and intercessor for the victims of oppression. Let purity and righteousness distinguish all your deeds. Be a home for a wanderer, a balm for the afflicted, a reliable fortress for a refugee. Be the eyes of the blind and the guiding light of the lost. Be an adornment for the face of truth, a crown for a brow of faithfulness, a pillar in the temple of righteousness. Message to the son of the wolf.